Today's episode of the Star Local Media High School Sports Podcast is brought to you by Poor Richard's Cafe and Star Local Media. Poor Richard's Cafe, Plano's oldest restaurant since 1973. They are open daily from 5:30 a.m. to 2:30 p.m., serving the three most important meals of the day: breakfast, lunch, and dessert. It is true Texas home-style cooking made with love and grit. That is Poor Richard's Cafe, located off of Avenue K in Plano. Welcome to another episode of the Star Local Media High School Sports Podcast. My name is Matt Welch, being joined by Taylor Raglin, Bryan Murphy, and Kendrick Johnson. We are down to the final two districts of our ongoing series of high school football district preview podcasts, and we got the big one on
the heavy hitters.
The one where, that's not to say it's like what's more important than the others. That's not true, but it's the one where of the 8 teams, we have 7 within our markets. We have 4 reporters assigned among those 7 schools. Hence us busting out the 9-6A brain trust and trying to squeeze all 4 of us onto the podcast. It is District 9-6A, the district that houses the 4 largest high schools in the state, and just has made headlines every which way in all manner of sport over the years. So so we can go at this district a bunch of different angles, and just to give some catch up from last year, just to kind of set the stage on where we left off last time in District 9-6A. You had Allen atop the district. We've all heard of Allen. They're still playing football. They won a district championship for the 13th consecutive year. You had Plano East and Prosper. Plano East, a massive resurgence for the Panthers, and Prosper, a team which acclimated to 6A about as well as could have been hoped for. They tied for second place, and then you had McKinney and Plano Senior tying for 4th place. McKinney won the head-to-head over the Wildcats, and they got that last playoff spot. Then you had McKinney Boyd in 6th, Jesuit in 7th, Plano East in 8th. So let's see. The first thing that jumps out to me about this district, guys, is, we've kind of built up the idea, at least among ourselves, that we're kind of expecting this district to be completely different from last season. There was so much turnover just all across the board. I went back through just this morning and looked over the all district list from last year, just as far as like the cream of the crop, the top talent in the district, just how much of that's going to be back. There were 66 kids that were named to the all district team in 9-6A. 75% of them graduated. So it is it is going to be a completely new look. You just even go so far as to like the number of teams that are returning their leading passer. 1, Plano West. Wow. Teams that are returning their leading receiver. 2, Plano West. Shout out to Cole Carter. McKinney Boyd. Shout out to Kareem Coleman. We get a little bit more depth there as far as running backs go. Allen, Jesuit, McKinney Boyd, and Plano East all bring back their lead rusher. But yes, nevertheless, it is a district that is going to have many, many new faces.
It's a lot of transfers.
Yeah. A lot of transfers, and we don't know what that. I guess we're going to try to make sense of what that could mean, because there's so much new about this district. And Taylor, you and I were just talking on Monday that just even the question of who's the second best team in this district, you can go a bunch of different directions with that. And I think that's kind of where I want to start with this, because I feel like there are a few teams that have a justified claim to that second place spot, assuming that we all think that Allen's going to continue doing Allen things despite its own question marks, and is the on-paper favorite to repeat as district champions. So we're just going to start off. We're going to call this simply just the case for second place. We're just going to drop a few of the teams that I think are on that radar as far as teams you can make a logical argument for that might be able to work their way into that second place spot. If you read a lot of the prognostications, it sounds like Prosper is at least everybody's de facto number 2, which, for a team that, again, is just in its second year as a 6A program, they have their own personnel question marks. The Eagles are certainly getting no shortage of love, though. So, Bryan, what have you been able to gather on Prosper, and kind of make the case for why should people buy into Prosper as being a team that could potentially finish as high as second place this year?
Well, when you first look at them, you're like, well, okay, 3 returning starters on that offense. They're one of those teams losing their running back, quarterback, and star receivers. Yeah. But they just plug them right back in. They have some heavy hitters. They don't have Wayne Anderson anymore, and Caleb Adams, he's been gone for 2 years now, but they have a guy they're really high on in JT Lane, 5'11", 190, and Coach Brandon Schmidt said they're ready for him to carry the load.
Okay.
They love having that, that horse back there in the backfield to carry, the ball 15, 20 plus times a game. They're expecting him to be that. And there's some question marks at quarterback. With Tyler Bailey and Jackson Berry. Jackson Berry played a little bit last year, kind of in the kind of like a belldozer role. I know from Oklahoma.
Absolutely.
Use him in goal line. What was his first name?
Blake Bell?
Blake Bell.
Yeah.
Blake blanked on his first name. But yeah, the belldozer. He was kind of using that role last year. He had 6 rushing touchdowns. He was using goal line packages. But he's on pace to be that starter. But Tyler Bailey is a sophomore who's the starter on JV last year as a freshman. He did a great job. Both of those guys are getting looks so far in fall camp. So they have a competition there. 2 really good quarterbacks. And a guy that, Coach Schmidt is really high on at receiver is Cameron Harpole.
Okay, interesting.
6'3", long receiver. Something that, they've used a lot of slot guys and smaller, shifty receivers in years past, like DJ Love comes to mind. But Cameron Harpole is another guy that, they're expecting big things from. And I haven't even mentioned their big offensive line.
Of course. One of the best offensive linemen in the country.
Yeah, but first you have Aaron Perdot, who's 310 pounds, but, he doesn't get as much love as he should, with Jake Majors.
Yeah.
They're the 4-star UT, Texas commit, 4-star guy, one of the top guards, in the entire country. So, having those big bodies paving the way for whoever is at quarterback and whoever's at running back, they'll be just fine.
What about that schedule, though? Because they had a favorable schedule. They got a lot of games on the road this year against the heavy hitters, don't they?
They do, but they also have an advantage now with the new stadium. I don't know. You could say that.
How's an advantage? If you had no idea.
Do you not think the McKinney ISD Stadium was something that kind of galvanized those schools last year a little bit?
Record-wise, McKinney North kind of took it to another level, but the other ones is still really too early. I do know that McKinney played a lot better at home than they did on the road last year.
Yeah, because, we've all been to that Prosper Stadium that they've been using the last 4 years.
Sorry, Reynolds Middle School.
Yeah, emphasis on middle school. A 6A program was playing at a middle school. And it's not a middle school stadium anymore, man. I checked it out last weekend, a little media tour that they had set up for us, and it's phenomenal. The stadium is being built up there in northern Collin County with Salina and Prosper, man. They're fortunate, to say the least, and so that might help them. The second year, give them a little pep to their step. I don't have their schedule right in front of me right now and see who they're playing at home, but still, it doesn't matter. The teams coming into that stadium, granted, that's the same district with the Allen Stadium and McKinney Stadium, but still, Prosper's right there with them with the stadium wise.
One of the things that I kind of like is, the departures on offense, those can't be overlooked. It wasn't just Wayne Anderson and Keegan Shoemaker, but so much of their passing game centered on Jostine Clark, who had, I want to say, 14 of their 24 receiving touchdowns.
And that's who they're kind of expecting Harpole to be.
Yeah.
When I talked to Schmidt a few weeks ago, especially when we were cranking on our gridiron previews, he was really high on Harpole. And I was kind of, I asked him, I was like, well, I'm kind of targeting a player to watch. I don't want to do Jake Majors or Jackson Berry, the quarterback. It gets kind of bland. It's an easy choice, or JT Lane. I said, who's a guy, who's a guy that maybe wasn't a big name last year, but really a guy to watch? And he really harped on Harpole. And so that's, big body. He might take Jostine Clark's, spot in his role that he kind of had last year.
Plus, you got to factor in just how consistent they've been under head coach Brandon Schmidt. He says he's entering his 4th year as the program's head coach. They've averaged 9 wins per season under him. So it's just, I don't know, it just speaks to, because we're wondering, with all those questions, you still see Prosper, some project them to be the number 2 team in the district, and you're like, well, this team's going to have, a brand new offense. How can that be the case? But it might just be, maybe a vote of confidence in just their consistency under Coach Schmidt, how they've really seemed to have turned a corner as a program, just the overall talent pool in Prosper relative to a lot of the others. Prosper they made the playoffs in every single sport last year. They were great across the board, so it just might speak to the caliber of athlete that school has right now. But yeah, you can make a definite case for Prosper as being a potential number 2 in this district. Kendrick, what about McKinney? You think McKinney's got a shot to sneak up that high? Given the turnaround that they showed in the second half of last season under Coach Shavers?
That's where I have to base off of, because they have as many questions as they did this year, but it's like they have more of a foundation because they know they can win. Last year, you had a whole new program, new coach. For the school to have been 110 years old, that's the craziest reset I've ever seen of a program that had went to the playoffs the year before. So when they had been losing for 9-10 years and hadn't been in the playoffs, and they cleaned everything and just graduations and circumstance. This year, it's going to be, they have a lot of question marks on offense. don't know who the quarterback's going to be. Seth Cox got banged up over the summer, so he might play. They might split. They have 3 different running backs. They may go with a 3-headed monster, which is a very key thing because the last 4 years they have had a running back go over 1,400 yards or more. So I don't know how they're going to get that. And then I saw in another publication, out of all their yards last year, 98.6 is gone from Kelvin Thomas and Kendrick Dunn, who went for 1,600 and like 16 touchdowns.
Oh, yeah.
So all that's graduated. So they only got 1% of their rushing. I know you big on the analytics coming back.
Because that's the thing. Like between Kendrick Dunn and Matt Gaddick, like McKinney's really emphasized the workhorse back. I mean, Kendrick Dunn was as frequently used a running back as anybody in the Metroplex last year, and that was kind of their identity. And that's why, as I'm trying to kind of make sense as to what to expect out of McKinney, I have no idea what their offense is going to look like, just because they were so reliant on Kendrick Dunn, and without him, I mean, I think I feel better about what they have on the defensive side of the ball. You know, as Mary wrote, Mitchell Tyler, you know, one of their standout defensive linemen. When's the last time you think McKinney High School sent a player to the Big 12? He's coming into Baylor, by the way. I mean, that's a pretty given McKinney High's history, as far as just football recruiting goes. I mean, that's no small feat getting a kid to the Big 12.
And then they got Cooper Frazier. The defense is definitely going to be the strength. Coach Shavers is a defensive guy, so I know he'll come up with some schemes. I've seen them like literally been on the sideline and know what I've seen in practice and see them do something completely different. Like, where's this? Mm-hmm. So I know I'm surprised. I know the opponent's going to be surprised. The defense will definitely be leaned upon, but the main thing is they're going to have to find an identity on offense.
Oh, yeah. How are they going to score points? I'm fascinated.
So this is the wrong district not to be scoring points. You're going to have to put up at least 28 to 30 points a game just to compete in 6A.
And then you look at a team like Plano. You know, Taylor, when we did our the entry for our summer question series, just a few weeks ago, and that was one of the questions was, who do you think is right now the second best team in the district? And I, deferred to you for that question, and you decided to go with the Wildcats. So just kind of elaborate on how you arrived at that conclusion.
I think the things that you guys have been talking about, the doubts, really kind of led me there because all 3 of these teams have question marks, and all 3 of these teams are going to have to, kind of forge ahead without some pieces. I mean, Kyron Cumbie is, losing that thread out of the backfield.
That's big.
is no small feat to overcome for sure. But I look at a team like Prosper. I'm through underestimating Prosper, I guess. I mean, they're a postseason team in my mind, but at the same time, that's a lot to lose. The numbers that you've already been through to this point, that's a lot to lose. Same with McKinney. Do I think that Marcus Shavers is, a great leader for that program and has them training the right way? Sure. But, that's another, Kendrick Dunn is again, another piece that it's very difficult to replace stuff like that. And it's 2 programs that I think the doubts are not just on the personnel level, but also in the, I don't want to use the word fluke because I don't think last year was a fluke for either team. But you have to find a way to carry that forward. Prosper has to continue to adapt to 6A with some new bodies now, with some new faces. McKinney has to prove that, the second half of last season is the McKinney that will be present moving forward and not the first half.
What plan?
I will say this. I will say this with Coach Shavers. Like last year, nobody knew nothing. It was just like, they have like a lot of sayings. We all we need. We all we got. Is this really gonna work? Now they got proof that it worked. So it's a whole different thing. Again, once you got some receipts,
I think
stuff's gonna happen.
I think it's those doubts that led me to Plano because Cumbie's gone, but Tylen Hines is haven't seen him run the football. That guy's he's the real deal and he's a real threat. I think there's consistency at quarterback, which is weird for Plano. It's not usually the case. They have a guy coming back that's been there, has a year ahead of him in Oliver Towns, and has some time to really kind of grow into this offense. And they're not just, Plano's kind of notorious for, okay, who's our senior that we're running out there in the center this year?
It's the first time since 2013, I believe, that they've had a junior begin the year at quarterback.
So, there's consistency there. I liked what I saw from him. Last year, he played a lot in the East game. I think he's got some talent, both running and throwing the football. I think, obviously, Tylen Hines speaks for himself, a little bit in the shadow of Kyron Cumbie, but very similar in their ability to break a game and make a play out of nowhere and bust one off. So I think just, kind of being around 6A longer, bringing back some key pieces, and being right there last year and just missing out. The streak of McKinney High, not McKinney and McKinney Boyd, McKinney High getting Plano, I mean, is that lasting forever? It's been 3.
It's real.
But is this, can they make it 4 with all the questions they have? I don't know. And if that game goes the other way, if they can get Prosper, if Prosper isn't, scoring the football the way that they're accustomed to, I think it comes down to those 3 teams. But I'm just kind of giving it to kind of the blue blood, I guess. Maybe not as of late, but the program that's been around and the program that has less personnel questions, I feel like, heading into next season.
Yeah, to piggyback off that, I mean, the run game is still going to be formidable. You mentioned Tylen Hines, not just him, but Cody Christ, who's entering his 3rd year as a varsity starter. They're pretty confident in the skill players that they have on the outside. They moved Nolan Williams from the secondary over to receiver to complement Jaden Chambers, who's entering his 3rd year on varsity. Defense, they traditionally load well. They did lose a bit, on defense, but under defensive coordinator Ryan Cox, I can't think of the last year Plano had a below-average defense. They're always solid on that side of the ball. The biggest thing as far as what could potentially be the fly in the ointment is up front. They're very young on the offensive line.
Oh, they used to have a really good offensive line.
They could. They're very confident in what it could be, but right now they lost a lot. And one of the guys that they were looking to kind of anchor the unit was at center with Jacob Rusk, a player that Plano has invested a lot of time into building up. And they got some bad news over the offseason in which it sounds like that Jacob Rusk's season is in doubt because of a back injury. Ooh. So as a result, in this kind of, Plano's been having to kind of experiment with new center options throughout, the first, couple weeks of fall practice. Guys like Trace Noble, Dominic Herrera, Wyland Smith among the names that Jadon McCullough mentioned that are in contention for that starting center job. So, if you see Plano, that's going to be a very pivotal subplot. We kind of underestimate the importance of snapping the football. That's where it all begins.
So, but tell me this, because you especially, because you grew up in Plano, why have they picked a running back to be a bell cow? Like, they don't, for instance, the reason they've lost to McKinney, other than McKinney's I played them, is I've seen Kyron Comey do a spectacular move, get a 40-yard run, and then he won't get the ball for a quarter and a half. It's like they don't like the hot hand.
They have a lot of talent though in the backfield. Like Cody Christ and Tylen Hines they're no joke. That's the thing. They had 3 really good running backs, 3 guys that were capable of being number 1 rushing options. And Kyron Comey got the greatest workload of the others, but they want to make sure that Tylen Hines and Cody. It's a lot of mouths to feed, so that's probably why it was last year. Let's see. They haven't had a really a workhorse back though since. Brandon Stevens was a workhorse back. I take that back. Yeah, Brandon Stevens was absolutely a workhorse back. So it was just the first 2 years after he left, and they've kind of balanced the look between Cumbie and Christ and last year Hines. It'll just be interesting to see how things work out up front for Plano as far as something that could potentially, again, kind of monitoring that early in the season, going to be a very, very pivotal subplot for them. I also don't want to leave out, because no one's talking about this team as far as being in the mix for to finish second or whatnot, but man, I told you this morning, the more I research this team, you could talk me into McKinney Boyd being a very, very improved team under
I'm going to go see them practice today. One of the 2 things that I think are going to be very underrated is just to change the mentality with Coach Joe McBride. Yeah. He's a winner. Everywhere you go, his resume speaks for itself. So you got somebody changing culture that's used to winning, but their transfers are it's like if you could customize what you need to do and go pick a player, they got to play Wyatt. They got this kid from Collegeville Heritage. I haven't heard him, but I've heard positive things about him named
Jake Fex.
They are, so you got 2 nice players in your secondary, and that was a problem last year because they couldn't defend nobody. So that gives you a chance. Your back end is good. They're experienced up front, and Tyler Shaw could go off for 1,515 touchdowns. He had 727 and 11 touchdowns in part-time duty last year.
You can make a case that Boyd has, on paper at least, potentially the best secondary in the district. Not just with Clay Wyatt, not just with Jake Fex, who was a first-team all-district selection as a junior last year at Colleyville Heritage, but also Jalen Shaw, who was an all-district pick in 9-6A last year. And then it's the fact that Tyler Shaw was as effective as he was on the ground, considering how McKinney Boyd as an offense completed only 37% of its passes on the season.
With 2 quarterbacks.
Yes, with 2 quarterbacks, and had 8 total touchdowns through the air to 11 interceptions. The fact that they just didn't have, outside of Kareem Coleman, the passing game just never really took off last year. And that Tyler Shaw was still able to be as effective as he was, averaging almost 7.5 yards per carry. If I don't know who's in the mix to take over at quarterback.
It's kind of Carter Whitfield. He's a sophomore. Okay. They're high on him, but you never know what to expect. This will be his first real varsity experience. And on this Ohio trip, y'all, on the receiver, one of the go-tos behind Coleman, they're leaning on as baseball pitcher Jack
Hagan.
Jack Hagan.
Okay.
He's 6'4", runs a legit 4.5, 4.4, and he got good hands. So
that's a weapon.
That's athlete.
Sure.
I know baseball's his meal ticket. If you've seen the guy pitch, he's definitely going doing big things on the baseball diamond. But football, he's looking nice out there. The little I've seen, like I say, he got 6'4", guy that can run a 4.4, 4.5. You can do something.
You said legit 4.5. Were you there with the stopwatch? Because these coaches will say, "Oh, he runs a 4.4." Man, it's like a 4.7. 4.8.
And then you think of you mentioned Joe McBride and just the impact of having him come on board, and thinking of what he did last time he was perusing the sidelines at Capel, going 51-10 during his tenure. There were 3 district championships, had Capel routinely state ranked, and he had spent 4 years in the in the athletic director's chair. To be it speaks something to just something about that Boyd job, and that was the job that lured him out of the athletic director's chair and back to the sidelines. It tells me that he's not just getting out and resuming coaching if it's just any other job that comes open. I think that he he clearly saw something there, sees some promise that he can really build something into with Boyd. So I don't want to discount that factor as well. But I don't know. The more I learn about this Boyd team, the more I think that they could be kind of like last year's Plano East, and a team that maybe began the year with not a ton of fanfare, but winds up exceeding expectations.
Gotta stay healthy. Mm-hmm. From knowing their roster, they have they've improved on starters across the board, but I don't think they have the depth. So health will be a key
for sure.
I think health is key for anybody in this district, not named Allen.
Yeah, I was going to say outside of Allen.
Speaking of them, so one team that again I think we're all in consensus in thinking that Allen is the favorite to repeat as district champion. So we've talked about some of the teams that are in the mix for number 2 or some of the playoff contenders or whatnot. So let's talk about the rest of the district, and let's start at the projected tippy top with Allen. Yes, I mean
as far state or bus.
It always is.
Yeah,
it's playoffs or bust, district title or bust. No. Allen is, if you're just talking, so kind of picking up the trend that we, me and Devin Hassan, adhered to for Monday's podcast. If we're just talking reasons to be excited for a team for the upcoming season. Allen fans, they've got all the reasons in the world to be, just giddy about an upcoming football season. First off, they've won 87 of their last 89 football games. That stat still just defies common sense. They've been to the state semifinals 7 years in a row, and they've won 4 state titles over that span. Speaking more specifically, though, to this team, Allen has an absolute highlight reel at quarterback. Guy with Raglin Sharp has as much speed at the position as they've had since Kyler Murray. And if you stuck around for the second half of any Allen games last year during mop-up duty, you were almost guaranteed to see him bust at least one run of 40 yards.
He had a 70-yarder against McKinney, and the reason he didn't score because he got tired and gassed, and the guy had an angle. I don't think he wanted any contact, so he just veered out at the 5-yard line, didn't get touched. Okay. Yeah, guy's fast.
And he's got 2 twin wrecking balls on the outside, and the Green twins, Blaine and Bryson Green, both Division I prospects, to take over and reprise the Theo Weiss role and whatnot with him being off to college.
That's special.
Allen's the only program that can replace an OU kid at running back, receiver, Ole Miss kid at quarterback. Oh, they're just fine. D1 talent, just plug them all in.
Oh yeah, you have Seldon Manning back too. Seldon Manning had 1,200 yards and 16 touchdowns last year.
So they're talking state then, as usual.
Oh yeah, that's always the goal of Allen. No matter because that's the thing. They're not without question marks for sure. They bring back only one starter on defense, linebacker Jaden Healy. But the thing is that that's nothing new for defensive coordinator Corey Cannon and the staff, and they traditionally reload much easier than you'd expect for a team that graduates the majority of its starting defense on the regular. The big thing to watch though is going to be the offensive line. And that's an area that has been, I've said in the past, that is the heartbeat of the Allen juggernaut. And that is the one area where just about every time out, you could automatically pencil them into having a decided advantage was in the trenches, most notably on offense. They just had 2 linemen get drafted into the NFL, and Bobby Evans and Greg Little. They graduated they graduated 4 of the 5 starters from last year, and then the 5th kid transferred. So it's going to be a brand new offensive line, completely uncharted waters for Allen. it's a group that obviously, given the track record of their offensive line coach Mike Carter, you assume that they're going to turn into a pretty serviceable unit. But the bar is so high, and again, it's been an area that you just haven't had to worry about with Allen for so long. So yeah, I mean, that is one thing. And then plus, you also can't discount, like, Raglin Sharp can run the ball terrific. We don't know what he looks like throwing the ball 15, 20 times a game. So there is that. But nevertheless, it's still Allen. And
it's not going to matter.
How bad do they want the rematch with Duncanville? Is that talked about, or they?
Allen is very well trained in how to speak with the media. So what they say to us with the recorder in their face and what they say to each other are probably two different things. But yes, again, when you've won 87 of your last 89 games, if you're one of those two teams that handed them a defeat, then yeah, I'm sure Allen would love a crack at Duncanville in the semis.
The last time they lost a regular season game, I think Coach McBride was on the sideline at Capel.
It was Capel 2000,
so
2012, and then the next week Kyler Murray was named the starting quarterback, and the rest is history. So
so he does know the recipe to beat Allen, which not many people have that on their resume in this decade.
So yeah, that is at least a look at Allen. They're still going to be really solid as far as what that means, as far as how they stack up against the Duncanvilles and the North Shores, teams that have a bit more coming back and that are a bit more fortified right now in their identity. We're not going to know for a few months because, again, Allen is not without its question marks, and we need to see how this all gels first. It looks fine on paper. You give them the benefit of the doubt because they are Allen, but as far as what it means come November and December, that remains to be seen.
My whole thing was, I don't see how they're going to beat. They could beat Duncanville. I can see how they can beat Duncanville and North Shore back-to-back, or any team. I don't see how that's going to happen.
Yeah, they'll get a chance to answer that question if they can. Again,
I can see them being one, but not both, not back-to-back weeks. That's like, hey, go beat the top two teams in the country, and then you too can be a state champion. Yeah. Like, who does that?
I mean, would anybody be shocked if Allen?
I was going to say,
that's the thing. If there's a team to do that, then
this year, this particular team with the question mark. If they had more experience or were more seasoned, like they were last year, not at all. But this year, with all the question marks,
but you also have to factor in that if they play one of those teams, it's going to be in mid-December. You're going to have all of these question marks ironed out well beforehand, so you can't discount that. Today's podcast is brought to you by Star Local Media. 14 newspapers and websites with a print distribution of 270,000 homes and monthly page views of 600,000 online. Star Local Media, your community voice for news. And now, let's get back to the podcast. All right, let's talk about somebody else. Plano ISD, Taylor.
Mm-hmm.
Where do we want to? We've already talked a little bit about Plano. Where do you want to go, man? East or West?
We can start respectfully at the bottom.
Does West win more than one game?
I think so. I don't know. I think that you kind of threw out the theme of things to be excited about. Just in general, there's just a cause for general excitement, just newness and optimism and hope. Not sure that it'll pan out, but for those on the west side, there's finally kind of, they felt directionless.
Yeah, it's a new era.
They felt directionless. And if there's one thing you can definitively say about, head coach Tyler Sokup now, without having seen him play a game, is that he has a direction. Mm-hmm. He has a culture. He has an identity. He has a place that he wants the Wolves to go. Will they get there? I don't know. I mean, it goes back to your point of, you mentioned that, they're the only team to bring back their leading passer and their leading receiver, but those two names may not even be their leading passer or receiver this fall, because Danny Davis was the most of the time, I guess, to call it starter last season. He may not get the nod under center. We're not sure yet. There is really four names kind of vying for that role. There's Danny Davis and Will Cannon. I mean, publicly, I'm sure that Coach Sokup's known for a little bit which direction he's probably leaning. But Danny Davis and Will Cannon got the nod last year, but Andrew Pico, Wyatt Johnson, there's other names, veteran guys, maybe not necessarily under center at the varsity level, but guys that they're excited about as far as just being good, solid football players that might be able to step into that role. I'm sure we'll know soon. They have a scrimmage, this week like everybody else, and then obviously Sokup's kind of intimated that he's the kind of guy that wants to name somebody and move on and utilize all of them, but really have a guy. So, and then out wide, Cole Carter is certainly going to be a threat again, but, they bring back Tavarius Garland, huge body, a lot of talent, a lot of ability to go up and get the football, really good summer by all accounts. So, not a huge season last year, but with a renewed commitment, I think, to the passing game that Soka wants to bring. He wants to throw the football a lot more than they have in the past. Garland and just his pure kind of raw ability could factor in a lot and could be a real threat outside. So, I don't know. I don't know what to say the expectation should be for West. I mean, they could go 0-10 again just as easily as they could go 3-7 or something crazy. I mean, there's such a wide range of potential outcomes. But that being said, I think there is talent there. I mean, you're the second largest school in the state. You have somewhere to draw from. So if you can get them all pulling in the same direction, and kind of get a new look and a new identity and on both sides of the ball, and I don't know. You never know. I think there's talent for sure.
That's the thing. Like when you factor in how large the student body they have to draw from, I refuse to believe that you can't find some good football players within that school. It makes no sense why you couldn't. So it's just the question of so how many I've often I call back to my own experience going through the Plano ISD athletics tree. I played basketball, and by the time I got to my senior year, I can guarantee you that the 15 players on the Plano East basketball roster were not the 15 best basketball players at that school. Because a lot of kids just either dropped out because they just weren't, they just kind of lost a passion for the game, didn't get along with the coach, couldn't make it academically. I mean, it was, because that's the thing, I made it all the way to my senior year. I was a bench warmer essentially from 9th through 12th grade. That tells you all you need to know. A lot of the guys who were in front of me, that they just kind of got picked off one by one for a myriad of reasons. So I wonder how, if that was, I refuse to believe that was truly the absolute best product that Plano West could put out last year, given the kind of resources that they have.
I think that the talent is there, but the other piece is the motivation. Yeah, even from the ones on the team.
What about getting people to come out though?
Yeah, I mean, getting the buy-in, exactly. It's a numbers thing.
Exactly. Even it's the buy-in from the beginning, but even the guys on the team, Danny Davis has proven that he's a capable athlete. Yeah. He plays multiple sports. I think Will Cannon's a capable athlete. Greg Drawn, who dealt with some injury last year as a sophomore, I think he's a very capable athlete. They have guys, but even the ones that are there, it's hard to get yourself up every day and go get the crap knocked out of you and lose your 24th, 25th, 26th straight game and still be motivated to bring you whatever your 100% is. Do some of the kids, did they do that last year? I'm sure. But, I don't think anybody faults them for saying, holy crap, we're still there's just no insight, there's no way forward. So, maybe a regime change and some new philosophies and a new commitment to, I don't want to say a more modern offense, that's not true necessarily, but an offense that wants to throw the football around a little bit and fly around and make some, flashy stuff happen and that kind of thing. I mean, there's a lot to be said about just kind of wiping the slate clean and moving forward and breaking from what feels like, I'm sure for them, kind of an inescapable rut.
Because nobody likes to be associated with. I mean, these guys are athletes; they're competitors by nature. Nobody likes to be associated with a loss period, let alone 2.5 years worth of them. I mean, if they just get more, if it's a question of whether or not you believe last year was just more of a culture thing, and that just because of the losing compounded with more losing, that it just became a case where the well was too poisoned to even look back, and that just simply getting a new voice in the room, and like you said earlier, a new sense of direction might be enough to kind of get them back to where they are usually at.
Who can they be in this district though? On paper, then it's like
you're not gonna like this. You're not gonna like this.
Earmuffs, Kendrick.
Yeah, man, I don't think. I want to preface this by saying I don't think they'll beat McKinney. I don't. But
they almost did.
You look at last year. That's a 5-point loss. That is the only time last year they were even competitive. So. I mean, who knows?
McKinney had 3 turnovers. Though.
The same way that McKinney is a bad matchup for Plano, for whatever reason. Sometimes things just don't make sense. I mean, for whatever reason, maybe they just.
How does it make sense that McKinney beat Plano when they beat them 3 years in a row? If something happens once,
I'm saying that maybe there's something fundamental going on between those two programs that McKinney.
You're about to get all of McKinney coming in.
Hey man, I prefaced it.
He said it doesn't make
the thing is, Kendrick, because if I told 2012 Kendrick that at one point in time McKinney was going to beat Plano 3 years in a row, back when McKinney was going to run off the field by 5 touchdowns every game in this district, you'd get where we're coming from. Trust me.
I do not think.
Just as McKinney got good.
I never see McKinney lose to Plano.
That's the thing.
I've never seen it.
I do not think that McKinney loses to Plano West. I mean, I'll put that out there. I don't think so. But, you go through the schedule, you're looking for potential wins. I believe in what Mesquite's doing, but that's the same kind of deal. It's a program on the up and up. And
they play them in non-district.
Non-district.
I threw me off.
Whole schedule. But I think there's some programs on that schedule that, on paper, Plano West should lose to. I mean, on paper, Plano West should probably go 0-10 again. That's just the reality. But
it's the same schedule as last year that they went 0-10.
But
that's why.
The reality could also be that some of these teams that are on the up and up and trending upward could either slip up. There could be some mirage. Yeah, that Plano West is the same Plano West they've been for the last 26 games. Maybe they're not. So I don't know. I mean, they played McKinney tight. I think McKinney was the last team they beat before.
Yeah,
before the 0-26.
Yeah, when Gadding they were juniors.
So I mean,
21.
Like I said, I don't think it could happen, but it's that kind of program that if Plano West is going to sneak up on somebody, I think it'll be that kind of game, and who knows? We'll see.
Should be fascinating. That just the sigh, whether it's a collective sigh of relief or just the general emotion around that program if and when they get that first win under Coach Sukup, it's going to be something.
It's coming. It's coming. It may not be in 2019, but it's within the next. I truly believe 2 to 3 years he'll have them.
That should be competitive. The win coming. You talking about the turn the program?
The game against Plano East is going to go because Plano East lost.
Because the rivalry games they threw out the windows.
Yeah, I mean the same way that I thought Plano East would roll Plano last year and they didn't. I mean it's possible, but I guess to transition Plano East.
There you go. Way to set them up, Bryan.
I think you talk a lot about Sukup having to come in and change the culture. Plano East has an established culture of winning from last year and of being competitive, and last year that despite losing literally their entire offense outside of Trey Jones Scott, that's something that you can speak for. That's something that you can kind of hold on to as far as we were an 8-win team last year for a reason. Just because there's turnover. They're confident that it's something we don't get into a lot, but I think their JV was 9-1. They were a talented JV program. They obviously have talent throughout the program. There's obviously buy-in under Joey McCullough up and down the program. So, you couple that kind of expectation that's being built with Trey Jones Scott's coming back. I mean, outside of E.J. Smith, I think those are 1A and 1B of the best running backs in the district easily. And I think it drops off pretty tremendously, after them, with the exception of maybe Manning and some of the other ones. But I think easily they're the two best rushers in the district. He is really special, and really athletic. Didn't get a lot of opportunity because you had Brandon Mallory and 5 receivers that were just unreal last year, and that was kind of what the offense was predicated on. But this year it's going to be a different team. But different, I don't think means unsuccessful. I think that they're going to transition to a team that's more about clock management. That's about ball control. They're going to hand the ball to Trey Jones Scott a lot. They're going to ask him to carry a really heavy load, 25 carries probably on an average night. And then they're going to lean on their defense, which I think is going to be just fine. They bring back Kayvon Hamilton up front, unquestioned leader of not just the defense, but I think the entire team. He's taking visits to Navy and some other programs that, he's the real deal up front, and they have talent around him. I think they've kind of replenished the cupboard well. I think defense is something they want to recommit to because they started well last year and had a really good defensive unit. Got blown out by Allen, and things kind of trailed off from there, which can happen. But, I think on the whole, they're going to have questions at quarterback, big questions at quarterback. Either Ryan Faust, who was the backup last year, and I saw next to no action because Brandon Mallory was, so prolific, and they weren't really in that many blowouts where they had to, have a guy come in for a second half. Or a transfer in Dylan Hayden from Wyoming, who is younger and raw. It sounds like kind of the feeling with him. But if he could pick up the system, he could be good. But I think, we were talking about it earlier, Matt. If they can find a quarterback capable of managing a football game, of managing an offense that's more predicated on play action, running the football, controlling the tempo, really bleeding out drives. If they can get a guy that can manage that sort of offense and then lean on their defense, we were also talking about kind of the McKinney.
Yeah,
the
very
McKinney
much like
plan
McKinney last year.
From a year ago. I mean, it can be very successful, especially with an athlete like Trey Jones Scott in a defense that I think is going to be fine. So, I don't see them. I think they're right in that bubble as far as a postseason team. I don't think they're among kind of the upper tier of the first through third seeds. I mean, who knows? Who knows what could happen? This district, top to bottom, outside of West and Allen, that whole middle area is just really up in the air. But I don't know if they're a postseason team, but I don't think they're going to be any off night or any sort of a slouch either. I mean, Joey McCullough, I think, is going to have them ready to go. So we'll see.
Before we get to talking about some of kind of the marquee games to watch in this district, any commentary on Jesuit? I know we don't cover them, but they're obviously the other team in this district.
I think they're overrated.
Ooh, I'll take that's
because you got EJ Smith.
I think they're projected to finish like 6th in the district, though.
Yeah,
and they finished 7th last year.
Yeah.
So
they got EJ Smith and a bunch of guys. So
that's the big question for Jesuit this season: is how far can EJ Smith take him? He's arguably the best overall player in this district in terms of just general impact. But that's the thing; like they lost their quarterback, not to graduation, but to a transfer. Kevin Schumann is now at Capel. The leading receiver, Travis Whistler, graduated. Now, granted, EJ Smith is a very, very prominent in the receiving role as well. I mean, it figures like he's probably going to be in for a workload very similar to what Trey Jones-Scott has at East. And they do have some talent back on defense. Tommy Roy is a pretty feared linebacker in that district, according to many of the coaches that I talked with last season. And you've got a guy in the secondary, Jack Barton, who's also an all-district kid. So, I mean, they do have at least a healthy base to work from. Plus, Branson Hickman, their stud offensive lineman. I want to say he's the coach's son. There's at least a nice base to work from. They have 12 returning starters. It's the second most in the district. But that's the thing. Like we spent so much time talking about who we think is the second best team in the district. At this time last year, it was assumed that Jesuit was the second best team in the district.
Slam dunk.
And they wound up winning. I mean, I want to say like 2 games last year or something.
They beat Plano West and somebody in non-district.
Yeah, it was just a tough year for the Rangers and whatnot. So that's the thing, though. I mean, with EJ Smith, you're going to have a fighting chance every time out. It's just how can you defer teams from stacking the box and trying to take him out like a team like an Allen did last year or whatnot. So yeah, it just should be interesting to see. I mean, that's EJ Smith is must-see TV as any time that he's playing. So that should be more than enough incentive to get out and watch a Jesuit game this season. But yeah, I wanted to at least just get some thoughts on them since obviously they figured to factor into this equation in some way, shape, or fashion. So let's talk some of the marquee games in this district. We can each give one. What is Kendrick? What is the must-see game in District 9-6A from your vantage point?
Plano McKinney again. Who has won that game has had the inside track to a playoff spot because it's always the underlining McKinney versus Plano. I know McKinney swept them 2 years ago, and they were a bad second half away from sweeping them last year. What happened? They got in the playoffs. They 5-1 against Plano ISD. And if Boyd would have sneak in and beat a Plano in a West or any combination, they throw their hat in the ring. So I know this we're talking about a game, but Plano ISD versus McKinney, those matchups will be very key as to who get 2 through 4. Because whoever wins 2 out of the 3 will be in the playoffs. I'll put money on that.
I've been in attendance for all 3 of the McKinney wins over Plano Senior these past 3 years. And I mean, the stakes for last year's game. I mean, you would have thought if there was ever an opportunity for them to snap it last year. I mean, you would have thought that with McKinney being 0-5, and Plano having
that's what turned things around.
Oh yeah, that's for sure. And it just might be a case where like they just might have their number again. There's just some things in the district that you just can't really put an intangible quality to, but. Just something about that matchup it just gives Plano fits. Their entire offense it tanks against McKinney.
The first 2 years, I know when the Matt Gaddick and Quentin Corbar crew, they got in shootouts with them, and they couldn't adjust the offense. Plano's not really known for.
They came out and hit him quick. Yeah. They came out and hit him with big plays right out of the shoot, got out to a quick lead, and that kind of because Plano's a team
that took out Kyron Cumming because they had to throw a lot more.
Plano's a team that kind of needs to be playing in front, given the emphasis on the run and whatnot, and they just had a really tough time.
I didn't go to last year's. I went to 2 out of 3. I went to the first 2. I didn't go to last year's.
So yeah, that was actually my pick too, because I do agree that I think the winner of that game could very well be who gets the one of those. One team's the winner gets the last playoff spot, the other is left out. I could very well see a scenario like that.
That's what happened last year.
Yep. Brian, where'd you land on this?
I was going to kind of piggyback off y'all. Prosper plays Plano. Final game of the year, November 8th.
Where's that?
At Children's Health Stadium in Prosper. That game.
Do you have to say just Children's Health Stadium, or do you have to say Children's Health Stadium at Prosper ISD?
I just say Children's Health Stadium.
Are you allowed to? That was that what it's actually called?
I don't know. I might might get some phone calls after this.
Some angry emails.
Thanks, Matt.
You were on the tour,
Val may give you a call.
What did they tell you on the
It is
tour?
way too long to say. It's like
It really is.
It's like the Ford Center at the Star. I always say the Star, but you get what I'm saying. So that final game, that could be deciding the playoff spot. That could be deciding the number 2 seed in the district. It could be deciding a lot of things. Who knows? That those two teams could be 6 and 7 when they play that final game. But just the fact that it's that final game of the season makes it even more interesting, and it's at the Prosper's new stadium. So that's definitely my game to watch for sure.
Taylor, how about you?
Man, you go in so many different directions. How about McKinney and McKinney Boyd? I think that
Haven't even mentioned the crosstown showdown.
I think more than even McKinney versus Plano. I have both those teams in the playoffs. And kind of just my initial headspace of who's going to make the postseason. I think underneath Allen, Prosper, McKinney, and Plano are probably the ones that slot in there. But if McKinney's sitting in that 4th seed, or it ends up that way, if Boyd's going to find a path to the postseason, what better way? What better way to beat McKinney and sneak in there and
especially if the way last year went.
They owe them because last year McKinney did that to them. Hadn't won in 9 years.
Yep.
Beat them and caused the whole program change. But that ain't none of my business stuff. What is my business is that these teams. The rivalry's real, but you legitimately throw out the record. I never know what I'm going to see.
Yeah.
I seen the first year I covered this, I thought it was going to be the best game. It was the worst game I've seen out of it. Mm-hmm. And the last 2 have been like barn burners, including the one that went to last play 2 years ago. Mm-hmm. So you never know what you're going to see in
that vein,
showdown.
I guess maybe the 1B quickly would be East and West. I mean, I'm excited for that game just to see. Like I said, I don't think that West is going to beat East or anything, but it's a good barometer for how competitive are they going to be? If you can't get up for Plano East and be competitive and at least, have a good showing, then you're not there yet. You know what I mean? Whether or not they win that game or not, if West, has energy and gets up and makes it a game and is in it the whole time, then that's a pretty good, I would say, measuring stick for, okay, the program's at least working on getting back on the rails a little bit.
Because that was the game that we mentioned. West coming within striking distance of taking down McKinney last season. Mm-hmm. The year before, it was against Plano East that they almost snapped the slump, and I want to say it was like a 44-41 loss or something crazy like that. It was an absolute shootout, and it came right down to the last series to determine the winner of that one. So. Yeah, certainly no love lost between East and West for sure. All right, so let's round this out with the way we have been for all these podcasts, and let's give our preliminary playoff predictions. As far as which 4 teams from this district do we foresee making the playoffs, obviously these picks can evolve over time once we actually see these teams play games.
Yeah, overtime is within 2 weeks, most likely.
Yeah. So what we say right now, versus what we say when we put out our official district predictions the week before district play starts, could be completely different, but right now, where are we sitting as far as who we think are the 4 playoff teams?
I mean, I already kind of touched on mine, so, just to restate, I guess, I think Prosper, like I said, I'm done underestimating Prosper. Until further notice, they're a postseason team in pretty much any given sport. I think McKinney, the rebrand and the rebuild and kind of the upward trend is enough to get them in there. I don't know if they're the second best team in the district. I think they're a postseason team. And then I don't know. I feel like I'm higher on Plano than some people are. But I like what Plano might have going on this year. So, underneath, obviously, Allen. I mean, I think it goes without saying that all 4 of us have Allen. But, yeah, Prosper, McKinney High, and Plano Senior for sure, I think are my 3.
Brian, how about you?
Allen, Prosper, Plano. I'm kind of leaning towards Boyd. I based off what you said and what I've heard, and that all these transfers coming in, I don't know. They could be a sneaky 4 seed, and I'm not super high on McKinney like a lot of people are. So I'm not the McKinney guy, so don't put it on me. But I could see Boyd being that surprise 4 team, and then fighting somewhere with McKinney. But I just don't see McKinney making the playoffs again.
Kendrick, how about you?
Allen, McKinney, Prosper. I'm leaning towards Plano, but Boyd could sneak in there. If Boyd beats 2 of the Plano schools, write my words, they will be in the playoffs. They got to beat 2 of the 3 Plano schools.
Okay. Let's see. Allen 1. I'm not going to give them. I'm not going to put the others in order because I haven't decided that far yet. But I do think Prosper's going to be in the mix too. I've talked myself into Boyd being a playoff team. I really have.
You talk over McKinney?
Over McKinney, yes. I mean, let's not act like it's crazy. McKinney just beat them for the first time in the game last year.
Yeah,
that's the thing.
I didn't say that.
Isn't that insane to think that getting a new head coach in there, and plus with all the talent that they have, coming into the program, that
they're definitely a more talented roster this year than they were last year.
It could just be McKinney Boyd like we've come to know them, over the years. But I don't know. I again, that could very well come back to bite me in the butt since it's a team that would require a pretty significant turnaround. But I don't know. I'm high on McKinney Boyd right now. We'll see what they look like in non-district and if that holds heading into district play. But right now, as of right now, let me pencil in Boyd, and then. Yeah, I guess either the winner of that Plano McKinney game. Is Plano really going to lose to him 4 years in a row? I don't know. I mean, common sense says they will. I mean, McKinney just has their number right now, but I don't know. But then again, I don't know. Is Plano ISD going to get shut out of the playoffs? Even that seems weird to say.
How crazy
it almost happened last year.
If Plano ISD was not in the playoffs and both McKinney schools made the playoffs, how wild would that be?
It's due to happen, though. It's due to happen.
Crazy.
Yeah.
It almost happened. Not last year, but the year before.
Yeah, that came down to that. It came down to that Plano. It came down to that Plano East game, and there was a moment there. If East had beat Plano in the last week, then PISD would have been shut out of the playoffs. And there was a moment there in the second half where East made some massive comeback, took the lead on Plano, and oh my goodness, it might happen.
And then also too, had Boyd beat McKinney by more than 4 points. I think it was 8. It would have happened. Boyd had to beat. Remember the whole point differential? They had to beat. They only beat them by 4. They had to beat them by 8.
Yeah, so we'll see. All right. So I had to kind of hedge my bet there. So I'm all right. I'll pick Plano for that last spot right now. We'll see. They could we could see these things could look completely different in a few weeks. So that is at least our all too extensive preview of District 9-6A. It's to be expected. Like I said, we cover 7 of the 8 schools in this district. That is a look at least where we're kind of anticipating the district landscape to be at. We've got one more district, and then it is officially on to week 1. We will close things out on Monday with a preview of District 6-6A, talking some Louisville ISD and some Capel. In the meantime, folks, thank you for checking out this episode. You enjoy the rest of your week, and we will talk to y'all later.